I'm Laura Pharis, and I live in Lynchburg, Virginia. I teach at Sweetbriar College, and I'm also a fan of the Book Art Center in Charlottesville. And during COVID sanctuary and shelter in place, I needed to teach an etching class, and the subject of the etching class was etching. And so I thought, how in the heck am I going to teach etching online? I'm not even very good at doing anything online. But I found out about a kind of printmaking. I didn't invent this, but I found out about it, and it's using a pasta machine. So here's my pasta machine. It's been slightly modified, but it's clamped to the side of the table, and I'm going to use it to make some intaglio prints, if not actual etchings. And I've explained to the students the difference between the two. So my students, they had to leave school without any supplies, and I'm supposed to assume that they don't really have art supplies or access to them. And this process works well with that. So some of the things that you can use are milk cartons. You can cut this carton apart and use the inside of the milk carton. Or this is something I really like, which is these kind of cartons, because the inside of the carton is coated with a kind of silver coating, and when you scratch through it, you can actually see what you're doing. And you can also use those translucent plastic milk cartons. So I used that for this first plate I want to show you. This is a piece of that translucent plastic from a, half gallon of milk. And I've scratched into it using various tools. This is an etching needle. That's kind of cheating, isn't it? But I just happen to have one at home. And so you can just scratch into it, and it's kind of hard to see your work. Like this already has some ink on it, but when the new marks that I just made, that mark, you can hardly see it. But sometimes if you put something dark under it, it makes it show up a little better. So this is just for a demonstration. I'm just showing you how to do this process quickly, but normally I would spend a lot more time struggling over a plate and trying to make it look cool. But just for this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and print it. Okay, before we go over to ink up the plate, I'm going to put some paper into soak here. And this is very good quality printmaking paper. This blue one is called Pescia. It has a little watermark there that's like a trident.
I've used that. I used it for lithography.
Oh, cool. And then this is, I believe, Arches Cream or Reeves BFK. I'm not sure which it is, but it's one of those. So I'm leaving them to soak for a few minutes while I ink up the plate. All right, here's my plate. And here's just a piece of paper towel so I can move it around easily. This is my stove, which happens to have this cooktop, and I can put this on a very low heat, like 1.5, 1.4. So it's just, I can touch that and it doesn't burn me. It's not super hot, but it'll warm up the plate a little bit. And this is what we're using for ink. And I didn't make this up either, but I think it's brilliant. And I think Janet Balvig, I was watching her videos and she had this idea. Now the last time I inked up this plate, I used purple ink because I don't want to, this is all my crayons and I don't want to waste the black ink and the brown ink and the stuff that I might normally use on a proof. But since I used purple ink, I purposely didn't clean the plate. And now I'm going to use something that's the opposite of purple, like green. And the idea is that these colors are going to mix together on the plate and make something a little more neutral. So first of all, I want the plate to be warm. And I just color on it. And I'm trying to get the ink down into those lines. This is really a dry point process, what I'm doing, a point process. And in the world of printmaking, dry point is the official name of when you scratch on a plate just manually and you don't use acid to bite it. Because I couldn't very well send acid through the mail for my students to etch their plates with. But anyway, so I'm trying to get it down into the lines and cover everything that is the drawing. And then when I wipe it, it'll smear all over the whole plate, because I want the whole plate to have plate tone. P-L-A-T-E-T-O-N-E, plate tone. Now to wipe the plate, I'm using a cotton ball. And so I'm sort of wiping the crayon down into the lines, and at the same time, I'm wiping it off the surface. And that's what intaglio printing, I-N-T-A-G-L-I-O, intaglio, it's Italian word. It's what this means is that you put ink on the whole plate, and then you wipe it off the surface and it stays down in your lines. So now my plate is inked up. I don't want to leave that on the burner, that's not a good idea. And it has plenty of ink on it, and I can turn off the stove and go over and print it. I want to make sure I don't have any of that green ink on my fingers. So what I need to do is I need to take a sheet of paper out of here. I'll use the Pescia. And this is too much water on it, so I need to just blot it. Now, I'm sort of in the process of learning how much to blot it, because you want it to be damp, but you don't want it to have so much water on it that it makes it kind of blurches out. You don't want the water to make a lot of blurches. That's a special printmaking word. Okay, now to put this through the press, I have to make sort of like a little sandwich. So I'll use, I'm trying to have this stuff all ready. Okay, a piece of mat board. My plate. Use the clean side of the mat board. The good paper. I love that. Can you see the watermark?
Hold it still. There's a watermark. I can't see it too well through
That's
this
right.
camera,
I'm sure it probably won't show very well, but at least it's kind of cool. Doesn't hardly show on that side. I probably should do it like that so it's not so. When you use really nice paper and it has a watermark, that's kind of a sign to print connoisseurs that you're using your really good paper. The next thing I'm going to use is some blankets. And so I cut these small blankets. What did I do with them? So to make the sandwich, I've got my mat board, my plate face up, my good paper, my blankets. Everything is, just for convenience, everything is cut to be the same size. And then on the back, I'm going to put a piece of manila paper, which is literally from a manila folder. And that gives me a kind of stack that I can run through the press. This is the pasta machine, the way you're probably familiar with the pasta machine, where you put the dough in here and the pasta comes out here. But for the purposes of using it as an etching press, you just turn it this way so that it will come out like this. So I'm bolting it onto the table. Ouch. And did you just put Remy in this film?
Yeah.
So now I'm getting it nice and tight. And then the crank is famous for always falling off, but we don't care. We persevere regardless. And I've got my stack or sandwich, and so I'm going to put it through, see how it does. There's plenty of pressure. And now, let's see if it worked. I take off the manila, take off the blankets. You can see a nice embossing there of the plate mark. And then just carefully peel it off. Well, I thought my purple would show up more, but it hasn't showed up a lot. But there it is in green. The purple didn't blend in with it, which I thought it would do. But that's your print. The great thing about using the water-based crayons is that the cleanup is just water. You know, you don't have to use a bunch of solvents, you don't have to wear gloves, unless you're very messy. And so all I have to do is rinse this off in the sink. I'll do that later. But now I want to ink up this plate, which I did on the Tazo tea, and you can see maybe that it has a silvery coating on it. You can see the drawing a lot better. So let's back over to the stove, and I will ink up. Can you see my fish?
Yeah.
Okay. You want this to be hot enough to just soften up the crayon, but not hot enough to melt it. This is just right now. Well, you know, we probably should have turned off the TV.
It's not bothering anyone.
Okay. Oh, that is really bright. I'll just have to work with it. If I can see a white line anywhere, that means I haven't gotten the ink down into the drawing well enough. You know what, I think I might just make this be a one-color print because this blue is so intense, I kind of don't feel like adding a lot of other color, although this fish does have a red, it's called a red cap. Let me see, what's a color that would be, so I went to a brown to kind of work against how blue the blue is. I think I want all of it to be a little bit less blue, so I'll just put the brown everywhere. Leave a bit of this plate here, plate in quotations, is actually bigger than my paper, so I'm not going to have to worry about these two ends too much. All right, let's go print it. First, I'm going to rinse off my fingers for a minute. Well, here's my fish. I'm sort of hand wiping it a little bit now. All right, and then I need to make the stack again. So I need the piece of mat board. Where did it go? Here's one. I'm saying that this is the press bed. So I put this on the press bed. Then I put the paper next. And blot it. I have to say that when I did that green one with the hawk, that was just the right dryness of paper. There it is. No blurches, like this one had bad blurches. But I was telling my students you have to make friends with that. because that's going to happen. And maybe it's not so ugly. Maybe it's kind of beautiful in a way. Or maybe it can be used. With art, you always have to utilize accidents. It's the whole deal, especially printmaking. All right, here's my piece of paper. Then I want to put on the blankets. Then I want these blankets. These blankets are kind of funky. I want the piece of manila, and then I'm ready to run it through the press. I hope this is the right thickness. I think I might put this piece of, I might put another piece of paper on there because I'm feeling like my silver plate is a little bit thinner than the plastic plate. All right, let's see what this does. It doesn't want to go in at all. That might be a sign that it's too thick. There we go.
Nice.
Let's see if it's nice.
It's crazy how well the pasta thing works.
Isn't that amazing? But if you've ever seen a etching press, it is two big rollers. What's not there is there's no press bed, but we're just using the piece of mat board for that. Let's see if this worked. Oh, there we go. It's not horrible. It's not great, but it gives you an idea. And there you can see both colors coming through.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. Now I have one more thing I can do to show you. Well, those were two intaglio plates. In other words, I put ink on the whole plate and then I wiped it off the surface and made an image that looks like my drawing. Of course, they're always a mirror image. You have to always think about that if you're going to, for example, have writing. You have to write backwards on the plate. So there's another thing that you can do with this process, but I'm probably going to show it to my students, but not really highlight it, because it's sort of more of a monoprint technique and not so much of an intaglio technique. But since I'm sort of thinking I might do a series of goldfish for this class, for my tests, I looked up a goldfish in here. It's my favorite kind, which is an oranda. And what I would do here is draw using the same crayons that we're using for ink. These are water-soluble Caran d'Ache crayons. And so I can draw, I'm going to do it really fast. I call this, sometimes when I'm demonstrating, I call it quick and dirty, Q and D. Just do it really fast. I don't want to make you have to watch me for half an hour while I mantle over this drawing. I'm really slow normally and very picky, but I'll do it fast. This is not what my normal work looks like, you guys. So you can just do a drawing. You can do any sort of drawing that you want on this. I would suggest only not making the crayon too thick, like laying down a big, thick chunk of crayon. A thick layer like that, it ends up being kind of like glue and sticking to the whatever plate you're using, or sticking rather to whatever paper you're using. Sorry. Okay, that's I'm going to just be done, but like I said, normally I would fool with this for a long time. Okay, here's another piece of paper. This time I don't have to go to the stove because this is done. This is the whole image. I just have to blot it. I do have a little bit of crayon on my fingers. Mea culpa. Maybe it's, I can't use that side. All right. So then, once again, you have to make that sandwich or stack. So here's my plate, is actually just this piece of paper. And by the way, I need to cut it down. I already drew some lines on it so I would know where to cut it down. Just like a television chef. Okay. I'm going to cut some more of this side off because I want the fish to be a little bit further across the page. See. Then I put my good paper. Then I put my blankets. Where are the blankets? Here they are. Then I put my manila paper. Here's some. And this time I will put another layer because this is just a piece of newsprint that I drew on. And what I have been drawing on is thicker than that because it's either a piece of plastic or a piece of cardboard, which is thicker than a piece of newsprint. So I've got a few pieces of manila here. I'm trying to have them add up to be the same thickness as either the cardboard or the plastic. Let's see what happens. Too thick. I can just take one out. You can also adjust the pressure on these pasta machines, but I don't like to do that in the middle of printing. They have a lot of different amounts of pressure. Let's see if that worked. So here's my, this is fun. It's almost hard to tell which one is the drawing. This is the good paper, and they're the drawing transferred. And I might be able to actually print this again and get what's called a ghost image. That would be much lighter. But there's my little Fisk. And this is something that was on the back of the paper, which I didn't think was going to come through, but there you go, free art. That's not like my normal work. Don't anybody think that that's what my work looks like, please. All right.
Is that it?
That's it. Of course, you have to do a cleanup. You have to put everything back where it belongs. You have to
Turn off the stove.
turn off the stove and put things, if things are wet, you have to put them to dry, like these blankets might need to kind of be over the press. And it's not really a big messy thing though. I mean, how it's, you know, compared to printing with oil-based inks, it's not bad. Things that you can use for plates, one thing is you can actually use CDs and scratch on that, use it as a plate. And another thing is styrofoam, like a lot of people are getting meals from DoorDash and so forth, and they come in a styrofoam box, and you think, wow, that's too bad because that's so wasteful. But you can use it, and so here's this part of a plate, and I made it be a plate, like a printmaking plate of a lizard. It's very hard to draw through the styrofoam. But anyway, these are some prints that I made from that plate using that technique. They're all a little, these are a little different because I drew back into them to help them. See you when I see you when we get out of this sequester.